Today on Investigate TV Plus, a teen says quick thinking and an AED saved his life.
It's incredible I survived, and it's honestly a blessing.
Shock delivered.
But our investigation found not every school has this critical equipment. We take an in-depth look at the fight to bring life-saving skills and devices to schools.
Plus, school systems across the country are rewriting the book when it comes to student grades, but is changing the scale, setting kids back.
There's no way that I could come to work each day and do 50% of my job and stay employed.
Then,
radar.
Pause for a portrait. The photographer focused on the perfect pic of everyday heroes. In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus.
In a matter of seconds, a high school athlete in seemingly peak physical shape can collapse. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. Cardiac arrest is the top cause of death among young athletes in the U.S. Yet we found a big problem. Not every school is equipped with an AED or an automated external defibrillator. An AED works by delivering an electrical shock to the heart that can help it reestablish a normal rhythm.
Critical equipment, as 90% of people who receive a shock in the first minute live.
Investigative reporter Rachel DePompa spoke to a former student athlete who's alive today because of the device.
A deputy racing down the track after 17-year-old senior Ansel Laureano crosses the finish line and collapses at practice.
You get the breast, I'll get the chest, okay?
Continue with compression. Press, press, press.
The AED already hooked up, about to deliver a second shock.
Come on, buddy.
The deputy performing CPR.
Yes, come on. Come on, Ansel. Come on.
Continue compression, please.
Actions that saved Ansel's life and countless others across the nation. There's Linton Beck in Tennessee, a cross-country runner.
You got a perfectly healthy son, and then he's on the floor with no heartbeat.
And number 81, Nathan Higuera in Arizona. He collapsed during summer football practice.
I could not be here right now, you know.
Although these events are rare, sudden cardiac arrest is the leading cause of death in student athletes. According to a study cited by the National Institutes of Health, the survival rate for high school student athletes with sudden cardiac arrest is 68%. If an automated external defibrillator is used, that survival rate jumps to 80%.
But not every school in the country has one of these, an AED. This quickly shocks the heart back into rhythm. And let me show you what we found. As of September, only 16 states in the District of Columbia have laws that require AEDs in every school, from elementary to high school.
Begin CPR.
There are some states, like Hawaii, that require AEDs at sporting events only. Meanwhile, Florida requires them at games, workouts, and practices at high schools governed by the Athletic Association.
It's just quite shocking to me that schools don't know about it, don't think about it, and most importantly, aren't prepared about it.
Despite Michigan not having a law at the time, Alex Bowerson's high school just happened to be prepared.
I don't know how many of these little farm town schools would actually have AEDs.
He was on a jog through the hallways, warming up for wrestling practice, when he started feeling a pain in his chest. 10 seconds later, he was on the ground. The nearby cheerleading coach jumped into action, performing CPR. After 2 minutes, he was blue.
Stopped breathing entirely, lost a pulse entirely. But by that time, she already had an AED on me.
Alex says the AED was at the end of its life cycle and only had 11% battery left. But that one shock brought him back to life.
It's incredible I survived, and it's honestly a blessing.
Shock delivered.
As soon as you can get your hands on the AED, you get it onto the patient and you deploy it, because that is the game changer.
Harold Mayfield's worked with the same ambulance authority for nearly 2 decades. He teaches others how to be a paramedic and how to use an AED.
You don't need training to use this.
You do not. That's the beauty of this. You hit a button and it tells you exactly what to do. It's like Control-Alt-Delete, you know, on your computer when nothing's working. That's what we're doing with the AED. It's Control-Alt-Delete, get it to restart, and hopefully it goes right back into its natural rhythm.
The American Heart Association says when it comes to cardiac arrest, time is brain function. Time means survival.
We know for every 1 minute that somebody does not have CPR performed or an AED used, their chances of survival go down by 10%. So that means you have this 10-minute window really to make a huge impact on whether or not somebody is going to survive their cardiac arrest outside of the hospital.
Lawmakers in Congress have partnered with the AHA to introduce the Access to AEDs Act, which would require the Department of Health and Human Services to award grants to schools to help them pay for AEDs. As for Alex, he shared his story in Michigan, which as of April 2024 now requires AEDs in every school.
I'd love to see a world where every school has an AED within 3 minutes of anywhere.
Because when it comes to matters of the heart, beating the clock saves lives.
In a statement, the U.S. Department of Education tells us it does not have a grant program that specifically provides funds for medical equipment in schools.
But it does have programs where schools have some discretion in how the money is used. To read the full statement, head to InvestigateTV.com and search Beating the Clock.
There's an effort to bring another life-saving training to schools.
And all you need are 2 hands. CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, can double or triple a person's survival if it's administered immediately.
Yet, only 40% of bystanders know how to perform CPR. Experts believe we could save more lives if this kind of training was required in all schools.
Reporter Heather Graff shows us how that effort is already underway.
Angelia Bryant is a teen of many talents. But it's this use of her hands that might be the most impressive. Angelia learned CPR during her freshman and sophomore years of high school. Her home state of Virginia, one of about 40 states where CPR training is required to graduate.
I took it serious because I was like, I know it's something I need to learn, but I never thought that I was actually ever gonna use it.
So just how soon did you have to put those skills to use?
The next year. So the next semester, I was it happened.
In September 2022, her grandmother suffered a medical emergency, an apparent seizure. But Angelia helped her father administer CPR, and her grandmother survived, forever grateful for her granddaughter's quick thinking.
But I'm glad they were here. Especially Angelia.
And now fully recovered, she says her family is living proof the training can make a difference.
All the schools should do that.
The American Heart Association says you can learn CPR in as little as 60 seconds. To break it all down, the AHA posted a training video online. You can find it at heart.org/nation.
Still ahead, a microscopic organism can have a massive effect on your oral health.
The research helping scientists get to the root of fighting cavities.
Plus, going beyond the grade.
Sometimes we miss those students who need more support.
How school districts are rethinking a traditional grading system in the hopes of seeing more student progress. You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Investigate TV. You can catch stories and full episodes. Whether you remember your days in school or recently checked your child's report card, many of us are familiar with the A to F grading system.
Typically, it's where a score of 90% and above is an A and 80% and above is a B, and so on.
Some schools are now ditching that traditional system in an effort to help struggling students.
Experts say changes include evaluating students on improvement over time instead of assignment scores, and eliminating soft skills like attendance and handing in assignments on time.
A district in Missouri got a lot of attention when it announced its new grading system for the 2024-25 school year.
Reporter Sharon Chen shares the reaction from parents and teachers and how the district responded.
In August of 2024, the Kansas City Public School District launched its no-zero grading system. So that meant that the minimum grade given on any assignment would be 40%, even if the student didn't do the work. So I asked a group of KCPS teachers and a parent what they thought of the policy. Teacher Meredith Shepard was the lone voice of support. She said one bad grade shouldn't affect the entire semester.
If you give a student a 40 and then they learn that skill later in the semester, those 80s and 90s that they're getting on their assignments will average out a little easier and it will make a more equitable grade.
Sandra Days, the parent in the group, said a zero grading policy would give students a false sense of reality.
There's no way that I could come to work each day and do 50% of my job and stay employed. Instead of doing this zero grading policy, I would wish our district and districts that are doing this will find out what is the root problem.
Initially, the district declined to speak on camera for this story, but a few days after our reporting, district leaders said that they heard teachers and parents loud and clear, and they agreed to sit down for an interview about an updated policy rollout and why they made the change.
The real premise around setting a minimum floor is really to think of it as the new zero.
Deputy Superintendent Dr. Darrell Davis and Chief Academic Officer Dr. LaTanya Franklin sat down with us to lay out the district's updated policy, which now says missing schoolwork gets a zero.
We're really trying to change that narrative that we're giving students something for nothing.
So essentially, if a student made 40% all year long, it's going to average out to 40%. It's still an F. So students really weren't getting credit for something they hadn't done.
The F stands for fail in the current system. The first grading scale was established in the 1800s at Yale University. By the 1940s, the A through F grading system emerged as the dominant grade scheme and what we have today. But Davis and Franklin point out it's far from perfect.
We've always known that this 100-point scale is inequitable, it's not fair.
We're looking at all students. That's really at the heart of equity, and sometimes we miss those students who need more support.
What about the people out there that are saying this is another example of the participation trophy?
Well, I think we have to go back to a 40% is a 40%. So at the end of the day, if a student does absolutely no work, let's say I don't do anything, that's still not a passing grade.
That if students are meeting the standard, they have the requisite knowledge, they are able to demonstrate what they know within the classroom setting, that really should be the truest indication of the education of that student.
District leaders tell me that the no zero for no work policy got so much pushback that they're unlikely to re-implement it. But the superintendent does note that the grading policy is a living document, so it can be further amended. Reporting in Kansas City, I'm Sharon Chen.
Well, still ahead, capturing a connection, the photographer helping canines get the care they need to protect the public.
There you go, Rita.
But first,
this is where the DNA sequencing occurs.
Dentists go microscopic to fight tooth decay, how they're hoping bacteria could help.
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime, streaming online. Get the app for Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. They're free to download. We know brushing our teeth twice a day helps prevent cavities, but did you know good oral care can help your heart?
I should have a good heart then. I brush like 4 times a day, I think.
That's wonderful.
I know. She just learned, by the way. What did you just learn? Floss?
That you're supposed to floss first.
Floss first. You never knew.
I was today
You've been
years
doing
old.
It out of order?
Out of order
right.
all this time.
There's a new t-shirt today. She's got change now.
Floss first.
Yes.
In one study, researchers asked nearly 700 people about their toothbrushing behavior. They found those who brushed less than twice a day for less than 2 minutes had a 3-fold increased risk of cardiovascular disease compared to those who regularly brush.
That frequent brushing helps fight the bad bacteria that causes cavities.
But not all germs are harmful.
Yeah, your mouth holds 200 to 300 different species of bacteria. Some are considered good and can actually help fight tooth decay.
Reporter Carrie Beal shows us how researchers are using microbes to save smiles.
This is where the DNA sequencing occurs.
Clemson University professor Vincent Richards is looking at DNA sequences of bacteria.
Loads into here, and then the machine runs for several days to produce all of the sequence data.
He and his team are trying to decipher the bad guys versus the good.
What can happen is when you eat sugars, there are certain bacteria that live on your teeth that like to break those sugars down. They eat them and they produce acid. And then that causes your enamel on your teeth to demineralize.
This in turn can cause cavities. But then there is good bacteria.
Because there are other bacteria that live on your teeth that have the ability to break down parts of your diet and produce ammonia. And that raises the pH on the tooth surface and actually remineralizes the enamel. And that's how fluoride works.
Richard says they have identified the species that could work as a probiotic to promote good oral health, but it's not yet enough.
So you can't just pick any strain from a species and hope that it will work. You have to get the right strain. And so we need to be able to examine the different strains within the species to identify those species that are really good at raising the pH.
It's a big project to take on.
I would say that this is probably the largest scale oral microbiome project that I can think of that looks at both the oral microbiome, again, from a taxonomic level, but also from a functional level.
Tooth decay is, I think, one of the second leading chronic diseases in children in the world. And this whole objective to try and develop probiotics has far-reaching effects.
Dentists aren't just going microscopic for oral health. Some practices now use artificial intelligence to fight cavities.
It's just giving us some guidelines. It's giving us a roadmap to say, hey, maybe you want to double check something. Maybe you want to look here a little further. We've got a pretty large cavity over here.
Dr. Alep Choksi showed us how the Overjet machine works. It provides exact measurements of decay and bone loss, clearly highlighting what the eye can miss.
A lot of times, things are really small that the human may not be able to detect, or sometimes the monitor on your screen may not have the correct contrast. And so what this tool does is it highlights those spots.
The x-rays are also color-coded, making it easier to show a patient what's happening in their mouth.
And this tool is really to help kind of create better communication.
In 2022, the Food and Drug Administration approved Overjet for patients 12 and older.
Still ahead, step and salute.
Yeah, his eyes look pretty clear.
How a woman is capturing the courage of canines while facing her own fear.
Our in-depth coverage continues. You can get connected to InvestigateTV Plus on all social media platforms. When it comes to police canines, they often experience a bond with their handler like no other.
And a photographer is dedicated to capturing that connection.
Reporter Dale Ryman explains why.
These dogs mean so much to the handlers.
Okay, so very cool. You've made a place of prominence in the office here.
Capturing memories.
Yep, see if you can look at me.
Is how Amy Zonlow serves her time with law enforcement canines.
There you go, Radar.
Since 2018.
I know the handlers love getting the photos of them and their dogs because many times I see what the handler doesn't see. Hey, buddy. I see them as a team, face on.
and how they interact with each other.
She's left her print with the canine community since.
The work that Amy puts in to help us promote our dogs, to get our story out there, to put a face to the names, you can't put a price on it all.
I went into it thinking I'll do one project.
She put together a 2019 calendar of canine officers, a small feat in and of itself.
My first shoot, literally, I stood in the corner. It was the old Sears building. Then I realized, like, oh yeah, I'm not super relaxed right now.
Flashes to a childhood incident.
Yeah.
A bite to the face by a large breed when she was 4 ended up hurting her mentally.
I never really fully knew that I had that until I started hanging around those dogs in the photo shoots. We always ended up having small dogs, and now I know why, I think.
The growth that she's had personally, from initially being very timid around our dogs to being able to interact with them, has been great.
You're such a good boy.
Amy is now working on her 4th calendar.
Yeah, his eyes look pretty clear.
This one will feature a variety of active, retired, and canines who have passed.
Have him sit, please.
Picture perfect. Focused on the now, with an eye on a future project.
The dog that bit me nearly 50 years ago, his name was Taurus. One day, if there's a working canine named Taurus that I can photograph, I can bring that full closure.
Let's go get a treat, pal.
Well, thank you for bringing him in.
Amy says the money raised from her 4th calendar will go toward the nonprofit Canine Hurricanes Heroes. The nonprofit, started by the namesake's handler, raises money to pay for medical expenses for injured canines.
And that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Tisha Powell. Thanks for watching. Next time on Investigate TV Plus.
We're really putting communities across the country at risk of losing the ability to have home ownership.
Sky-high insurance premiums have some homeowners wondering whether they'll be able to keep their homes.
It's difficult, and it's something that you lie awake at night worrying about sometimes.
An in-depth look at why prices are going up and what experts say you can do to lower your rate.